Hello again, my friends. I'm Lori Ashcraft. I'm going to be your host today here at Viva La Evolution, sponsored by Recovery and Resilience Solutions, which is a training and consulting branch of Crestwood Behavioral Health. Today, as you know, we were going to start talking about the tools that can really help you shift your culture. And that was going to be part 3 of this 3-part series on culture. But in the meantime, I've been hearing from some of you, and you're telling me that you need to clear the room before you bring something new in. I've been hearing a lot about situations and problems that could hold you back as you try to rebuild your culture. So I've decided to insert another episode between where we were and where we're going to go. And this is going to be on looking at some of those issues and problems and seeing what we can do about them to get them out of the way before we move into tools. Sound like a good idea, huh? Yeah, I feel much better about it. So I've asked Chris Martin to join me, and he and I have talked about this couple days, and we thought, this is like elephant hunting. We're looking for the elephants in the room. I mean, some of them we can see, some of them we can't. But either way, they're there, and if we can move them out of the way, that's the whole idea here. So I'm going to bring Chris in now, and a lot of you know Chris and love him. Some of you, this is your first meeting him. So here we go. Let's just bring him on before I babble around anymore. Oh, there he is. There he is. Great. Okay. So I told the folks that we were inserting this episode because we heard about the elephants. And Chris, I know a lot of people already know you and love you, but some may not. So would you mind telling a little bit about your recovery story before we start hunting elephants?
Absolutely, Lori.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So stop me whenever you think you need to.
Okay, take your time. We're not
okay. I grew up in Illinois, born in Illinois, where I live now. In the 1950s, I was born in 54. And my mom had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and paranoia about a year before I was born. She was like 20 years old. Mm-hmm. And my biological father actually was this amazing artist, but he had trouble living in the outside world. And he ended up committing robbery, and he spent my whole growing up life in a state prison outside of the state, Minnesota State Prison. So my mom married my stepfather when I was 4, and he was an individual who had a deep addiction to alcohol. He kind of went to work every day, but when he was not working and on weekends, there was just like a drunken chaos in our home. Yeah. And that situation seemed to exacerbate things in our home where there was a lot of violence, emotional, physical abuse. The first time I saw the mental health system at work was when I was, 7 or 8 years old. And my stepdad was one of his rages when my mom walked over to the light switch and kept switching it off and on. I'll never forget that. For must have been hours. Mm-hmm. And I think now she was trying to give a message about not having light in her life. Mm-hmm. Anyway, 2 men came to our house dressed in white. And I thought people dressed in white were good because I used to watch Roy Rogers. And what they did was they put my mom, this petite little lady, in a straitjacket in our living room floor. Mm. And that's kind of my first kind of glimpse of what behavioral health system was like. Mm. And so through my growing out life, she would be involuntarily committed, I don't know, many times, sometimes a year at a time throughout my growing up years in the Jacksonville State Mental Hospital, where she would tell stories later in her later years about very dark stories about what happened there.
Mm.
So whenever my mom would go to the state mental hospital, which was just about every year, sometimes for years at a time, year at a time, my stepdad would send me to the neighboring town where my mom's brother, my uncle, and aunt lived, which was really a blessing for me because it took me out of that environment. They were very loving people and gave me a very good foundation. And my uncle realized that I had this kind of way of being where I tend to be very creative or ambitious. And then I would go into these places where I was very kind of depressed. And so anyway, long story short, he sent me to a psychiatrist. I got an evaluation and started to get medication and therapy over the years. And over
How,
time,
how old were you then, Chris?
I was 17 years old.
Okay.
And so over time, I started to get better. And I think, and also, dealing with a lot of anxiety and fear too was part of that experience. And I still work with anxiety today. But what seemed to really help me recover, number one, I have some very, very loving people in my family that I'm close to, my sister and now my children. I have 5 of them and grandchildren. And I had a spiritual experience way back when, before I reached 20, that was really, I don't know, really transformational.
Mm.
That with the God of my understanding, and that has continued to be a real boon, a foundation of my recovery journey. And unfortunately, I'm optimistic like my mom,
Yeah.
and just really valuing learning and discovery, and so I went into teaching. Finally got my teaching degree. I always wanted to do that when I was 35 years old. Did that for a while, till 6th grade, and got a job offer at a bank as a training director for 12 years. And they went into paid more than teaching, by the way. They were downsizing. So I took a temporary job in behavioral health, thinking I'd go back into teaching the next year. And that's where you and I eventually met. And
Yeah.
it was an organization, Lori, that, as you know, where a person could disclose if they had a mental illness. In fact, that was considered a credential. We call it an ITE, on the evidence. And that was really astounding to me. It took a little while for me to be able to express that myself in the organization. And you knew that. You kind of helped me along with that. But in teaching, you could do that anywhere in America. And that would really be probably a job negative factor. If you disclose that to your faculty members,
Yeah.
discriminate against you, but they start to look at you in different ways. And here I started working in our organization where that was seen as a credential and a gift.
Yeah.
And so it started a whole new trajectory in our work of almost, going on 25 years together.
I know. I remember you were working for a different company when we first met.
That's correct.
And I met you someplace, I don't know where, and I could tell that you were just so good at things that I was just learning. So
Yeah.
I kept calling you, Chris, how do I do this? Or what do you think of that? Finally, I
Yeah.
said, Chris, why don't you just come to work for us? And you
Yeah.
said, okay.
And what we did was so amazing. Even still, we put together an associate degree in recovery,
Yes.
college credited classes where people who came to receive services were now taking college classes in our organization, in our service, and they got college credit for it.
And we figured out a slick way. I don't know. I'll try to just share a little bit about this in case it helps other people. We figured out a way where the college paid the tuition for our students. Yeah, it was some kind of, look, if you're interested, ask your community college about this, see if you can work a deal. And maybe we'll be able to remember what we did.
So the college paid, the college gave us the college credit classes once we articulated them, and they got the benefit of the enrollment.
That's what
And,
it was. That's what it was. Yeah.
and we were able to bill Medicaid. It's called Medi-Cal in California,
Yeah.
as a way to provide the services.
Yes.
And
Okay.
this
That's
pathway was something, not
yeah.
only recovery, but this value in their life, right?
Oh
We
yeah.
had
Yeah.
some that went back to college and got their 4-year degree.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those were fun times, huh?
Yeah.
Mm.
So that's my story, and it continues in our journey together, and I'm going to
Yeah.
stick to
You know,
it.
I didn't think of this before, but my mom married my stepfather when I was just on my 5th birthday. So we have
Oh,
that in common.
we do.
I have a lot of the same challenge. What do we call them? I don't like to call them symptoms, but opportunities,
Right.
opportunities to
Right.
get over things,
Yeah.
to use
Yeah.
them as strengths somehow. And
Yes.
I too had a spiritual experience I really that really has given me courage and strength. And I love how you said the God of your understanding.
Yeah.
That was, that phrase originated with Bill Wilson, the
It
founder
did.
of the anonymous programs,
Yes.
as a way to say, um, you don't have to buy into anybody else's idea.
Right.
Find your own path to God. And,
Yes.
um, and he did, and we did, and yeah,
Here we are.
yeah, here we are. Well, before you came on, I explained to the folks that we'd had some calls around our earlier episodes, and we could see that there were things getting in the way that needed to be addressed before we introduced tools and way to shift the culture. And that you and I are going to look at that today. And as we talked about it, we talked about elephants in the room and becoming elephant hunters. And
Yeah.
it reminded me that I keep this elephant in my office
Yeah.
just for that reason, just to remind me to look for elephants in the room.
I love it.
I don't know
I
how.
have to have.
Look at his eyes. Aren't those?
Oh wow.
I don't know if they're cynical or if he's just sleepy, but I love the way he looks.
But he certainly takes up space.
Yes, he does.
And I got one that
You have one too, yes.
my mom used to collect them, so I've kept this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Lori, I love it that we're going to use the elephants as a metaphor, elephant in the room. And that term actually originated in the early 1800s in England by this English author.
Really? I never knew where it came from.
He told the story of a guy who goes into a museum in London, and the guy comes out of the museum and he talks about all the little specimens that he was able to see in the museum. And when he was asked about this huge elephant taxidermy standing right in the middle of the museum, he hadn't even noticed it. So that whole kind of phrase, elephant in the room, took off. That was
That's where that came from.
19th century.
Yeah.
But what we're saying, Lori, is that even in the 21st century, elephants can enter our organizations and can obscure our vision, recovery, and a vision for hope and potential that we see in the people we serve.
I made a list of some of the things people said that brought up to me. Do you think we should go through this now, or did you want to say more?
No, I think it's a good point in time.
Okay. All right. So this is not an exhaustive list. This is just me kind of writing down what people brought up. So this came up more than once. What if you have someone on your team who's negative and cynical, but nobody ever says anything to that person? You just kind of work around them. If you know they're going to be gone on Tuesday afternoons is when you get together and have your staff meeting or whatever. In other words, it's a way to avoid and work around. I thought that was a classic example of an elephant because it's right there in front of you, but you don't address it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, your stuffed elephant reminds me of how, along those lines, sometimes we can do things where we walk away with a offense. Maybe someone offended us intentionally or unintentionally, and then we start to, because of this big elephant, we start to stuff feelings, and that stuffing of feelings kind of erodes the relationship. It
Hmm.
can cause us to be inauthentic with each other, and
Yeah.
even
Yeah. So that's the price we pay when we have an elephant in the room like that. And I would just say, there comes a time when you gently have to bring that up to somebody. And you and I used to teach a class on how to bring up hard things. And what
good.
we used as a guiding principle was bring things up in a way that you're bringing the person closer to you, not pushing them further away,
Yes.
which is challenging to do. But if you can do that, that's the way to break through that stuffed feelings and so forth. And it might
So
not work right away. You have to keep doing it sometimes.
it takes a lot of courage, doesn't it, Lori?
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Courage and I think intention and belief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Commitment. Yeah.
Yeah. You
So
know, Lori,
that, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say what you reminded me of some other things that can show up. Um, Evidences of an elephant or the trails it leaves in the midst is when employees don't keep their word with each other, or they don't keep their word with their people they serve.
Right. Yeah.
And because it seems like when the elephant is there, when people aren't being authentic, then sometimes there's finger pointing going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and, so there's a lot of fault finding and people not being accountable for themselves. And like you said,
Yeah.
what's going on in the present.
It's almost like when we don't address the elephant, we get all these other problems that come up as a way of, of I don't know, circumventing or
Yeah,
working around, accommodating.
yeah, yeah.
Takes a
You
little
know,
energy.
yeah, think about an elephant's wrinkles. We can think of all these other issues that take place, just like the wrinkles that
Right.
happen. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, another thing that came up were I'm going to call them procedures. Kind of, we've always done it this way. Uh, and when people see it doesn't work, instead of changing it, they do something called a workaround.
Mm.
And pretty soon, the next thing you know, there's so many workarounds. If you just change the procedure, change the elephant, it would have been
Yes.
so much easier.
Yeah. Yeah. So what you're saying is that the processes and procedures or policies, whatever you want to call them,
Yeah.
because they have an obscured vision, they start going through all these motions, and they forgot the heart of what they're trying to achieve, and it becomes a lot of unnecessary bureaucratic steps and processes.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we
Yeah.
could say that about all of this, couldn't we? That
Yeah.
unaddressed elephants really get in the way of remembering who we are and what we're committed to
Absolutely, Lord.
because we're busy doing all this stuff
Yeah,
that we think's our job.
it's true.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's see what else came up. Well, this is similar to having a negative team player. I think it's when a team is dysfunctional. And by that, I think people, well, from examples they gave, it would be nobody trusts each other on the team. There's competition. There's every person for themselves. That kind of mentality. Um, that's a that's a deadly elephant to have on a team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's when you start to see gossip and negativity
Yes.
and venting start
Yes.
to occur.
Which
And you know, You've talked a lot, Lori, about in the past about how gossip and negativity, venting, are sure to erode recovery culture.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, I used to see it a lot at smoking tables in various organizations. I don't know if that many people smoke anymore, but they used to gather at the smoking table, and that's
Mm,
when you could hear all of this gossip. Uh,
mm,
I guess you could clean it up and call it grapevine, but
yeah,
it's just really had a real negative tone to it most of the time.
yeah.
Another
But
one that came up is what about supervisors or bosses who are disempowering?
oh wow,
That's a hard one, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, disempowering, and what's interesting is that when this elephant comes into an organization, an agency, and it blocks people's vision of recovery and our intention of why we want to be there. And then what you're describing, Lori, the evidence is makes people not want to be there. And so leaders also step into that space. And what happens is they start to become missing. They're not, we've talked before about how it's important for leaders to be present, be inspiring
Yeah.
every day, to lead and coach people. And
Mm-hmm.
what happens is with the elephant in the room, because it crowds that out, the leaders go into behind their closed door and their
Mm-hmm.
black hole supervision, as we like to call it,
Yeah.
and they're not present.
Yeah. Yeah. I was in an organization a couple months ago, and they're going through a leadership change. So I was asking some of the staff, what would you like to see in your new leader? And I had my own list of what I thought they were going to bring up. And the first thing they brought up was present. We'd like the person to be present. Well, that's pretty basic, but you're making that point. It's so important to have a presence.
Yeah, yeah. And Lori, I'm assuming what we're talking about is not only folks who are leaders in a facility, but even the overall organization. A leader that's present, inspiring, and creating that continual kind of image and
Yes,
modeling for the whole organization.
yes, yes. We have a whole series coming up on leadership.
We do.
Yeah. So we can get into a lot more, but it's tempting, isn't it, right now to just talk about leadership because it's such a key element in having
It is.
a good culture and um, a good, safe work environment.
Yes, yes.
When
Because
staff feel safe, then it's easier for people who are being served to feel safe.
that's true. Before I talked about how sometimes leaders, when it comes to elephants in the room, can either let the elephant dangle where the weight presses against everyone and we
Mhm.
don't really kind of move out of that.
Yeah.
Leaders can strangle, be an elephant strangler.
It's,
And that's where they kind of choke out any kind of discussion about what people might be thinking about, right? And then there's elephant mangling where the leader feels like they need to control all the discussion so we don't talk about the huge giant
yeah,
amongst us, right?
yeah, yeah.
And then you kind of laid out this process called elephant wrangling, where
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
for leaders and also for anybody who works in the field, right? How can we wrangle and address the elephant and move on
Yes.
it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in our first two episodes, we really talked about stepping up. We talked about picking up the water bottle. We talked about the three people dancing, and those are all about having the courage to step up. So it's perfect that we're talking about it now when it comes to elephant wrangling.
Yeah, yeah.
It does,
We could all be leaders, right? Elephant wrangling.
yeah. Everyone should have elephant. Maybe we should make that like a little degree you put after your name.
Yeah, yeah,
AW, elephant wrangling.
yeah. This is an elephant wrangler. They sent
Yeah.
the packet packing. That's great. I like that.
me see if I have. Oh, well, here's the whole thing. I did want to say on this thing about dysfunctional teams. There's a book we used. It's an old book now, but it's called "The Five Dysfunctions of a Team."
Yes.
So if you folks are struggling with a dysfunctional team, it's not the end all book, but it's a really good book on building good teams. So I don't remember the author, but you could probably just Google five dysfunctions of a team.
Patrick Leoncini.
Oh, is that? Oh, okay, right. Okay, good. Okay, so sorry for that little diversion. I had to bring that in. But the other thing that came up, Chris, in talking with folks is, right now we're talking about external elephants.
Yeah.
What about the internal elephants?
Ooh.
What about the elephants we harbor inside ourselves that we need to wrangle if we're going to be present in our organization and be present for the people we serve? I can tell you some of mine that I wrangle every day. One is anxiety. In fact, when we get ready to do an episode, I have to go through a whole thing about calming myself down and getting myself centered and connected and so forth. Impatience is another one that I deal with. And then irritation. And I tell you, I'm really dealing with that right now because my husband, Gene, is quitting smoking. And did you ever smoke, Chris?
I did.
Do you remember what it's like to quit?
I had a 20-year degree in it, unfortunately, years ago.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, Gene has quit several times. He's very good at quitting.
Yeah.
And I have to say, he's really managed it so well. And it just gives me hope that I can learn to manage my irritation a little better.
Yeah.
Because I'm not very good at it, as you know. I get irritated, then I kind of lose it. So those are, I don't know what you might have to add to that.
Yeah, Lord, because it makes me think about because we're all part of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
These internal elephants are such a pervasive phenomenon that can keep us from being our best in doing this work. I'm thinking about internal elephants like resentment.
Oh, that's a big one. Yeah.
Bitterness, kind of a readiness to be offended.
Oh, yeah.
Internal elephants about my turfdom, right?
Say that again.
Kind of like my turfdom, it's my turfdom and stay away.
Oh, this is my place. This is my lane kind of thing.
This is my thing.
Yeah.
Gosh, internal elephants like, I don't know, maybe shame and guilt. Right?
Oh, yeah, those are pervasive. Another one, speaking of that, is fear. How if we hold a lot of fear, it's hard to be present.
Yes.
But this is our, it's so easy to see elephants outside of us.
Right.
We start looking inside at what our own growth process. That's even more challenging, I think.
Yeah, and actually, avoiding kind of addressing the elephant, kind of impacts us to avoid looking, like you're saying, taking a real honest look at ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's we talked earlier about the stuffing feelings and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And also, Lori, I think burnout, because we're really not looking at what the big giant in the room is, right? That's obscuring our vision. Then we start to have burnout and turnout and turnover. The organization starts to see that happen.
Yes. And burnout can be such a sneaky elephant too, because keep working over the top of it. I can think of one time in my career where I was really burned out, but I didn't I didn't recognize it. I just kept pushing on, pushing. And I finally got out of it. But it was so, I didn't have any energy, any interest in anything.
Yeah.
I just had to make myself go to work.
Yeah. You know, Lori, and I felt that times too. And another thing that kind of closely comes with burnout, not always, but sometimes, is something known as quiet quitting, where we kind of,
About that.
yeah, it's kind of like where we just go through the motions.
Mm.
The job literally becomes a paycheck.
Our body shows up, but nothing else does.
Yeah, our body shows up and our hearts and minds are checked at the door,
Yeah.
not checked in with our body when we come in.
Mm.
Yeah. So that is a big effect of the elephant.
You know, and just to bring this full circle, having a healthy culture really keeps elephants at bay.
Yeah.
And there's very little burnout in a healthy culture because there's a positive vibe, a lot of mutual support for each other. People are actually getting better. And that's, you know, that always is a big upper for staff. You see that you're actually making a difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So unless an organization and the staff in that organization decide to go on a safari to look for elephants and address them, then they're going to be involved in being so sorry. Not a safari. They're going to end up with everything we've been talking about.
Yes, yes.
And the bottom line, Lori, which is what our heart is all about, is that we don't see recovery happening.
I know. That's really the heartbreaker.
Yeah.
Really is a heartbreaker. Yeah, I really feel that.
So I guess the good news is that we can be elephant hunters.
We can
herd them out. And I think you mentioned that in our next series, we're going to be talking about some of the tools that we've learned to use that actually can keep our recovery culture sustained and elephant proof.
Yes, yes. And just to give you a little peek at what we'll do next time, unless something else comes up that we have to address before we get to tools. These are tools that Chris and I've created over at least over 20 years, probably more. And we still use them in a lot of our classes. So we use them all the time. And we wanted to share them with you to give you some ideas about tools you could build. If you wanted to, you could take some of our classes, but it's not necessary for you to learn to build your own tools. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. And Chris, maybe just for closing, maybe I'll talk about one of my favorite tools.
Okay.
And you talk about one of yours.
Okay.
People ready for next.
Sounds good.
Next episode. So we were getting ready to put peers in a case management site. And we'd done all the prep work. We'd gone down to the site. We'd met several times with the case managers. They were excited about having peers join them. The doctors were excited about having the peers join. And then we brought the peers in and we had a half a day meeting together. And the peers told their stories and the staff told their stories. So we were off to a good start. Sometimes you can track back problems to not having a good start, but we didn't have a good start here. And then I would go down there and I would see the peers kind of standing around. And I would say, well, what are you doing? Well, no one's given me anything to do. Or I finished that and now I don't know what to do. So it made me realize that we need a tool that peers can do, and it's just their tool. No one else uses it. And makes a big contribution to the overall treatment process. So we put together the self-directed recovery plan. And this was about a 9-page. I mean, there wasn't that much in it. It was just a lot of paper. And what it was is the peers would sit down with one of the folks that were receiving services there and help them fill this tool out. And it had everything in there that they wanted to do, where they wanted to live, what their goals were, what their recovery challenges were. It would be all the things you would see in a good treatment plan. And we've all seen a lot of bad treatment plans. So this would have been a good treatment plan. And then the person takes this to their case manager and says, here's what I want in my treatment plan. Let's talk about it. So it's very empowering for the person. It gave the peers something really meaningful and helpful to do. And it helped the case manager because it allowed them to not do the kind of the gritty things that the peers do so easily, and they could rise to a higher level using their higher level skills. I just thought that was one of my favorite tools, and that was an early tool. We did a lot of tools since then, but
we kind of modified the name. It's now called the Self-Directed Resilience Plan, but it does exactly that, Lori.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I remember the time when we were working in this one state in the U.S. and the state fined the behavioral health authority because the case managers were writing all these treatment plans for people without even meeting them. Remember that?
I remember that. Yeah.
And so this tool that you're talking about that you created actually circumvents that, where the person writes their own treatment plan.
Right. Yeah. And they're open then to all what the professional person sees. I mean, the professional brings their skills to this,
absolutely,
and their eyes to it, but they have something to work with. They have a place to start the conversation,
and they have buy-in.
Right? Yeah, that's good.
And it's such a wonderful tool, like you said, for peer support specialists to be able to use with the people they serve.
Yes.
The person walks away with something very meaningful.
Yes.
That's
and
awesome.
You can see what they did.
Yeah.
See that they helped.
Awesome. I love that. Another tool we have, Lori, is something called the Resilient Culture Playbook. And it's a concept that actually anyone could use. And the idea is ours is in a little booklet format where the leader comes out of the block hole supervision and once a week does like huddles, like you see like at Walmart, where they'll do a huddle in the morning to get people excited and energized.
Trader Joe's does that too.
Pardon me?
Trader Joe's does that.
Yeah, Trader Joe's. Yeah. I like that Trader Joe's culture. Anyway, the leader comes out and does the 15-minute huddle. There's a little bit of a reading they do, and they talk about it. And then the leader assigns a resilient play option for the team then to take out to the people they serve. And it's usually a question to engage. Then they come back the next huddle the next week and talk about that, and they get a new one. And what happens is that the leader takes charge of bringing the very nature of what we're supposed to be doing, our recovery services, to the forefront. Yeah. And starts the week with, this is what we're all about. Right? So
I haven't used that tool, but I've admired it for a while. I think it's going to make a big difference.
And like you said, Lori, we have so many, and people don't really have to buy our tools. They can actually, if they hear about what we've been doing, they can even make up their own. But because our hope is that we can really see recovery thrive in organizations, and elephants can move out.
Yes. Well, Chris, I think our time is up. Anything you want to say, and any final words?
Just want to say thank you, Lori, for inviting me. And I want to just really encourage everyone to long live, Viva la Evolution. Yeah. Is taking place and can take place even more in your service, your organization, your agency.
Pick up that water bottle. Thank you so much, Chris. And you'll be back next episode, hopefully, and we'll talk more about tools.
I will. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for being with us, folks. It was lovely to spend a little time with you again, and we'll see you again soon.